Welcome to the second episode of the summary of Blackhat and DevCon, in which I present the most interesting presentations and briefly describe what information you can find in them. If you have not watched the previous episode yet, you can find the link in the description. Now let's go to the next 10 interesting materials. Fax. Just like voicemail is a forgotten technology superseded by email or various types of instant messengers. However, the largest companies still use these devices. Today's faxes are usually multifunctional printers that have built-in support for this technology. Most often, they are connected to the company network. They can be an ideal target for attackers. Internal security teams usually monitor all internet connections quite closely. But do they monitor phone calls equally? Imagine that an attacker can access our network by sending us a fax. Sounds terrifying? In this material, researchers describe the vulnerability of JPEG format handling, which allows you to take control of the device. It is worth uploading the latest updates to our machine if we have not already done so. Cortana is a smart assistant created by Microsoft and available on Windows. It is able to recognize our voice and respond to our commands. All you have to do is say, "Hey Cortana." In the older versions of the operating system, the lock screen looked quite standard. It had only a place for username and password. This had changed in the latest 10th version of the system. We now have additional applications, such as changing wallpaper or the most interesting information. By oversight, it also turned out that Cortana works on this screen. So if we had physical access to the locked computer, we could read its information without knowing the password. All you had to do was call a voice assistant to bypass the security mechanism. The number of tools provided by Amazon is huge. More and more companies have to deal with the case of theft of API keys and unauthorized access to the infrastructure available in the cloud. One of the simplest ideas on how to check whether someone from outside has gained our secrets is to create a list of all the correct IP addresses belonging to our company and then compare them with the CloudTrail logs. That is the tool that records every use of the key. However, this solution scales quite poorly. In this presentation, the gentlemen from Netflix present their tool, which aim is to simplify the analysis of this data. Sometimes we need to persist some data in the application, that is, use serialization, and in a while load it again, for example using the serialization. If the data that we read comes from the user, it potentially may entail an attack. Some functions in Java, when loading such data, are able to automatically call certain methods on the object. To check whether in our case it would be possible to use this vulnerability, look for so-called gadgets. For example, fragments that perform interesting actions, like saving a file to disk or running it. In this presentation, the authors publish a tool that looks for such gadgets for us. We, however, are only responsible for filtering the results and checking if the deserialization is dangerous in our case. The domain market is currently quite wide. Sometimes a slogan or name that we would like to use on the internet is already taken, or was taken in the past. Currently, more and more websites use encryption. There is a new problem. On computers of old users of these domains, there may exist correctly issued certificates for the domain that currently is used by us. Formerly, it was popular to buy such certificates for a longer period of time, because the longer the period, the cheaper the offer. In this study, the authors have traced how many such old certificates can currently exist in the world and what the consequences may be. They also show how hard it is to invalidate such an old certificate. Most errors in the operating systems and various applications are now found by fuzzing. In other words, the process of running software automatically with data that is not expected. But why would anyone want to fuzz malware? The author of the next presentation tries to answer this question. He convinces us that finding errors in malware can, at best, let us take control over it or track its creator. He also describes how to start the adventure with this kind of research on your own computer. Remember, however, that finding vulnerabilities is one thing, using them in practice is a completely different matter and in most cases is illegal. If you are wondering if someone is following you or eavesdropping on you, the next presentation may be for you. The author describes various intelligence techniques used by 3-letter agencies in the world. It also shows how, with the help of the environment in which we live, we can make it difficult for agents who are watching us. Shared bikes are an increasingly popular way of moving around larger cities. But how does the process of renting and unlocking such bike work? And the most important question, is it secure? We can read about this in another material. It gives us the knowledge on how you can attack Bluetooth locks that are used in this type of construction. Certainly, some of the people who listen to this video are programmers. But have you ever wondered whether you can recognize a programmer based on the code he creates? How accurate can this diagnosis be? What if we pass our source code through obfuscators, obscuring the instructions? Will it be possible to detect the creator? The authors of the next research try to answer this question. Who knows, maybe in a few years we will be able to get to know the real creator of Bitcoin based on these studies? Do you know SD cards? That is, these tiny data stores that store photos on our phones and cameras? And do you know that some of them have built-in Wi-Fi support? So you don't need to have to connect them to your computer using uncomfortable converters in order to download the data you are interested in? However, what would happen when such card draws attention of security researchers? In this presentation, we will be able to trace the process of reversing the functioning of such card, starting from acquiring firmware, guessing architecture, and ending with analyzing of the micro-operating system that is in it. And that's all I have prepared for today's episode. If you like it, leave a comment and thumb up. See you in the next episode. Bye.